Hi, how are you? I'm Katya.
Hi, Emily. I'm Marcos' mother.
Hi, I'm Miss Kim. I'm Marcos' teacher, and I recommended you about a problem that I thought Marcos was having in the classroom, so I thought you might give us some insight.
Sure. I've observed Marcos,
Okay.
and I performed assessments both in Spanish and in English. The results indicated that he has a phonological processing disorder, which is resulting in an articulation disorder.
Okay. And what is a phonological processing disorder?
Sure. It's a fancy way of saying that Marcos is struggling with sounds. Words are formed by small sounds that are put together, and he's struggling with picking out those sounds and distinguishing them.
Okay. And then you said articulation. What's articulation?
Right. So our oral muscles are our articulators. We use our mouths to form words, and because he's unaware of how to distinguish those sounds, he's struggling with how to produce the sound with his mouth.
Okay. Okay, so is there something wrong with me then? I know that I speak a first language, which is Spanish, same with Marcos, and I have an accent, and does that mean that I have a disorder too?
No, there's a difference between a language disorder and a language difference. A language disorder is when there is an impairment with comprehension and there's an inability to comprehend.
Okay.
Language difference is a variation of different sounds an individual uses. So Marcos is having trouble with his comprehension, and you just have a different way of articulating.
Okay. And what were you saying, Ms. Kim, that you had seen in the classroom?
Well, in the classroom, I saw Marcos was falling behind in a lot of his classworks. His homeworks there were a lot of mistakes that he made. He has trouble following directions sometimes, probably not understanding what I'm trying to ask him to do. He's also very quiet in the classroom. Even when I have him to talk, oftentimes he would speak, but then he would hear his classmates laugh, and he will get discouraged and just keep quiet the rest of the day. So.
Okay.
Is there anything did you have any questions about what you could be doing in the classroom?
Right, I was wondering what I can implement in addition to what I do in the classroom already, because the class is already big enough. I don't want him to be falling behind, and
Right.
I know he has important tests coming up in the next year. So.
Okay, well, there's a couple different things that you might be able to do with him. You could work on where you have him placed in the classroom. You want to sit him somewhere where there's a board or a mat to eliminate any surroundings outside sounds, so that he can really focus on what you're saying as a teacher. Also, is there any downtime in the classroom where you have one-to-one?
Yes, in the classroom we have something called center time, where he gets to just rotate, go around, work by himself on different activities. So I don't know. Usually they'll work by themselves while I just look over them, but I can do one-on-one if that helps.
Okay, yeah. There's different activities that you can work on with him, and maybe even when you assign homeworks, you can go over it with him and make sure that he really understands it, and have him read it out loud to you, and maybe repeat things back to make sure that he has a clear understanding.
Are there any devices or stuff, worksheets that you would like me to work on?
Sure. There's a couple different rhyming sheets that I can give you, and he can work on just paying attention to smaller sounds, smaller differences in those
So
words.
you would like me to work on lower level stuff first?
You want to break
before,
it down
right?
to the sound, so that he has more practice with just sounds rather than whole sentences.
Okay.
Is there any way that you could go in the classroom and work with Marcos, maybe even with his peers, or to help him, or would he be pulled out of the classroom? How would the therapy work during the day?
We would do both. So so we would have sessions where I would come into the classroom and I would work with him during a class session and with his peers. And then also I'll be pulling him out of the classroom once a week, so that I can work individually with him and focus on his needs.
Okay.
So when you pull him out of the classroom, do you mind if I give you some worksheets to give to you, so that he is actually catching up with the classroom even when he's out?
Absolutely. We can work on things in our sessions, that relate to what you're doing in the classroom so that he can really have an easier time during class.
So what will be done in these therapy sessions that you'll be pulling Marcos out of the classroom for?
Well, it seems like he's struggling with his consonant aspiration. Now, in English, we have a lot of different, we have plosives that acquire more aspiration in certain placements of certain words. And in Spanish, that doesn't exist.
Okay.
So he's struggling with those words. For example, when we say the word pit, we use more aspiration after the letter P. And what Marcos is doing is he's saying pit, because in Spanish it's much shorter.
Okay.
So we'll be working on that. And also he's substituting P for the letter K, which is called fronting. So he's producing sounds with the front of his mouth when he should be using the back of his mouth.
Okay.
For example, he says pat instead of cat.
Yeah, I've noticed that sometimes, and when he spoke Spanish, he was saying like caliente, and I just thought he was just being funny, or it was just part of like the accent, and especially with learning from the English, maybe like carrying over some characteristics. I just really didn't notice. But now that you have mentioned that I do see that happening more.
Right.
Also, in the classroom, I noticed sometimes when he was saying certain words, he would like stop halfway. In my opinion, he would not say the last sounds of the words that you were saying.
Yes. I also noticed that he has a final consonant deletion.
Okay.
In Spanish, words can only end in 10 sounds. So any other words ending with a different consonant or vowel is creating a difficulty for Marcos as a second language learner.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so we're going to be focusing on those type of problems that Marcos is having, but doing what? Do you just play games? Is it like a game session, or?
We'll be working on things that he'll be doing in the classroom, and while doing that, we'll be using a recording device. So, for example, I have an iPad that I work with the students, and he'll be recording himself when saying, for example, reading something out loud or similar words, and then he'll be able to play it back and distinguish whether or not he said them correctly and self-correct.
Okay.
So that as he's hearing it, he'll be able to begin to distinguish certain sounds.
Okay. And what if I can't afford an iPad at home? That seems like a very useful method, but what can I do at home to try and use that maybe when Marcos is doing his homework?
Okay, well, you could actually just use your cell phone. While he's doing his homework, you could have him reading it out loud, and you could just record it with a video or even just a tape recorder and then have him play it back.
Okay, and he will know or learn how to do, to hear those things, or how long will this take?
Well, at the end of the year, we'll evaluate him. We'll evaluate him in both languages again, and we'll see how he's doing in the classroom, if it's improving, and then at that point, we'll discuss where he needs to be.
Okay, and one last question. Should I stop speaking Spanish if this is derived from Spanish, or if he's having these issues in Spanish? Should we only focus on English?
Well, you should focus on, because he's having an issue with the second language, you should focus on helping him to learn the second language, but I would say that you should speak both languages to him,
Okay.
because he's struggling in both. But I would do activities with him maybe and kind of point certain things out in English,
Okay.
so that he can have a better understanding of the second language.
Okay. And will therapy only be done in English?
The first session, it'll be an hour long each session, and the first half of the session will be done in English,
Okay.
and the second half of the session will be in Spanish.
So would you recommend there be an interpreter in the classroom, because I don't speak Spanish at all?
It would be helpful, because if Marcos is having trouble understanding, it would be good to have that extra support in the classroom to make sure that he really understands everything throughout his class.
And I know that you said half the session will be done in Spanish and half the session will be done in English. Do you speak Spanish as well, or
Yes.
would you have an interpreter in the sessions?
I'm a bilingual speech therapist, so I
Okay.
will be working with him throughout the whole thing.
Okay. All right. Perfect. So Marcos will be fixed, hopefully.
Yes, we'll work with him, and we'll hopefully, he's a very intelligent child, and I think if we really give him the right attention and focus it on where he needs it the most, we can really move forward with him, and he'll be fine.
Okay, I feel much better. I felt like my child was never going to be cured, and and I don't know how to think about it, and I'm really starting to understand now there's a lot of terms I didn't know, and I really appreciate you sitting down with me. And Ms. Kim, I really hope that you now know what to do in the classroom, and now I hope I could help better at home and work with the babysitter, and hopefully we can get Marcos to where he needs to be, so when it comes to high school, and he still won't be having these issues with his peers.
And if we all work together, we can all just help Marcos improve. So.
Okay.
I'm happy I could.
Thank you. So nice to meet you.